everybody. Story time with Mrs. Clark. Got a long one today because we were going to be talking about springtime. And this is one of my favorite books. As you can see, it's well loved. My mom and dad got me this book back, I won't say when, but I was 3 years old when I got this book. So it's a long time ago and it's a very old book. But it's about a little kitty cat named Pussy Willow by Margaret Wise Brown. Once there was a little pussy cat, not much bigger than a pussy willow. He was just as soft and gray and furry as those little flowers clinging to the branches all about him in the early spring, so he named himself Pussy Willow. It was a wild green world that he was born into. A forest of wildflowers grew above him. Some things were bigger than he was, and some things were smaller than he was, and he wondered at such little things. Suddenly a bug jumped out of the wild green world and up to him. "Where are you good to bite?" asked the bug. "Nowhere and not at all," said Pussy Willow, and he rolled the bug back into the grass with his soft fur foot. Bright moonlight nights came down from the sky. The peepers were peeping, and the tender buds and roots and wild flowers were a gentle smell on the warm night air. A little peeper peeped out of the pond. "How do you know when it's spring?" he peeped. "I don't," said Pussy Willow. "When the groundhog casts his shadow, and the small birds sing, and the pussy willows happen, and the sun shines warm, and when the peepers peep, then it is spring." And splash, he was gone. A deer mouse came softly out of the forest and tickled Pussy Willow on the nose. "How odd," she said, "a cat not much bigger than a mouse." "Little fat shadow," said the mouse, "come home with me and live in my house." "Kerchoo! I am not a shadow. Shadows don't sneeze. Kerchoo!" Pussy Willow gave such a big sneeze that it blew the mouse over. Time passed, hours and minutes and nights and days, and Pussy Willow grew more fur. Wild strawberries bloomed about him. Green grasshoppers hopped over him. Suddenly, Pussy Willow looked up. His pussy willows were gone. Gone. Long yellow things with little green leaves hung from the branches where the pussy willow had been. Where had they gone? He would go find them, and he would not stop looking until he found them again. So he went through the moonlight and the stars and thunder and lightning, looking for his pussy willows. He searched through the day and the night and the winds and the rain. Spring passed, and along came the first butterfly and bumped bang into Pussy Willow with a soft and certain bang. "Out of my way! Out of my way!" said the butterfly. Who are you? And what are you looking for?" Pussy Willow sat square on his tail. "Pussy Willows," he said, "did you ever see gray fur flowers that look just like me?" Up in the air, said the butterfly. "Anything that anyone would ever look for is up in the air." So Pussy Willow climbed a tree and fell asleep in a bird's nest. The bird came home and found him warm and purring next to their eggs. So they sat on him to keep him warm. Little friendly birds came out of eggs and grew up and learned to fly. "Everything that anyone would ever look for is up in the sky," they sang as they flew. Pussy Willow climbed all around the treetops, but he could never learn to fly. One day a bee buzzed by. "Who are you? And where shall I sting you?" "Don't," said Pussy Willow, "but tell me, did you ever see gray fur flowers that look just like me?" "Sassafras," buzzed the bee. "Look in the garden." So Pussy Willow climbed down to the garden, and there he found cabbages and roses, scarecrows, poppies, and big pink tiger lilies, but no pussy willows. He went up to the big fat cabbage. Did you ever see any little gray fir flowers that look just like me? But the cabbage just sat there, green and great and silent, and never said a word. Up popped the mole. Anything that anyone would look for is always in a hole. In a carrot, said the rabbit. In a garden, buzzed the bee. In a smell, sniffed the skunk. And the woodpecker pecked at a tree. Pussy Willow hunted through moonlight and sunlight and down by the sea. There he met an old hermit crab. The hermit crab came snapping out of his shell, waving his claws. Shh, said the hermit crab. Why do you walk by the sea? Psst, said Pussy Willow. I walk where I please. But did you ever see a little gray fir flower that looked just like me? Scuttlefish, snapped the crab. I see that you are a pussy cat, and the beach is no place for a pussy cat. And the sea is full of fish, and if you are looking for a flower, all the beautiful ones are in the sea. The hermit crab snapped back into his shell and scuttled away into the deep green water. So Pussy Willow wandered through the purple asters and the goldenrods and the pearly everlastings, through blueberries and blackberries and raspberries, but still he couldn't find his lost pussy willows. The wind began to blow and the leaves turned red and fell from the trees. Nuts fell on Pussy Willow's head, and apples dropped around him with a loud and sudden pop. He met a red squirrel hiding acorns. Are you a nut? Asked the red squirrel. What do you think? Said Pussy Willow. Did you ever see a nut with whiskers and pointed ears and a swishy tail? I am a cat looking for pussy willows. Did you ever see any little soft gray flowers that look just like me? Go look under the leaves, said the squirrel. Everything that anyone would ever look for is always under the leaves. The air grew colder, snow fell. Pussy Willow hunted through the snowstorms and the black branches and across shining ice until at last he fell asleep, a very tired pussy cat, under a thin branched bush. He took a little cat nap, and when he was asleep, something began to happen in the branches above him. The sun shone warm, and he dreamed that there was a soft purring in the air around him. The groundhog came out, and the groundhog came out of the ground, and when he saw the little cat's shadow, thump! Get out of my shadow, he said, and he woke him. Then all the little birds began to sing. The red-winged blackbird, the meadowlark, and the bobolink whistled in the air. The peepers in the pond began peeping. It was spring. And when Pussy Willow uncurled himself, there were his pussy willows. He had fallen fast asleep under the pussy willow bush, and it had burst into bloom above him. Everything that anyone would ever look for is usually where they left it, hooted the owl. On a bush, sang the robin. In the sky, sang the lark. In a song in the spring in the dark. Then up popped Pussy Willow. Everything that anyone would ever look for is usually where they find it, purred Pussy Willow. The end. I'm glad Pussy Willow found his pussy willows. I hope you guys have a great night, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Night, guys.